Head over to miniaturemarket.com where they have thousands of board games at discounted prices like The Hunger. The Hunger is a deck building game for 2 to 6 players where each of you are going to be a vampire. With a starting deck, you're going to go off and hunting on humans throughout the game. Now you'll all be starting in this castle, and you'll be working your way through the cemetery, mountains, plains, and forests, and finding humans to hunt. So at the end of the road are powerful rose cards giving you points each turn. You'll be hunting humans that will give you points when you hunt them, but they take speed in order to do so, or you maybe have some familiars that will give you abilities each turn. And you're trying to fulfill different missions, like 6 points if you have the most humans that are from the church. And not only can you get missions later, but there's also 2 public ones that will give you some focus as well. And you have to find a good balance of hunting the humans because they typically slow you down. And that's very important because at the end of the 15th round, if you don't get back to the castle, you'll either lose points if you've made it back to the cemetery, or if you didn't even make it that far, you've been burnt by the sun and you don't score any points. But the quicker you get to the castle, the more points you'll get as well. There's also an easier version on the back of the board that's a little more forgiving. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. The Hunger has a ton of individual great artwork and it mixes deck building with the press your luck. Lots of different missions you can get to give you a different focus each game. You're trying to go farther and get different things and hunt humans because that's better in turn order. You get like more choices as to which humans to hunt. But there are multiple strategies. You don't just have to race to the end. You can go halfway and do a bunch of things. You can go just a little bit out and do a lot of hunting, a lot of different things. Open sort of a sandbox world that's not just a race because the hunting slows you down, which is thematic. You've spent time to go get them, but it clogs your deck up. You got to find the right strategy for your right balance. Now, on the negative side of things, I felt like it was hardly worth it to go all the way to the end because you really had a race and it wasn't as fun to do a lot of different things. You had to be super uber focused to get back in time. And the game is similar to Clank, but it is definitely very different. More of a stringent, hey, it ends in 14 rounds. I definitely preferred Clank a little bit better, Clank in Space specifically, but others I played liked this better. Also, you know, there's a way that you could buy a bunch of cards towards the end of the game, which can really throw who's going to win, but only if you've been sort of closer. So another thing that sort of like incentivizes you not to go so far out into the forest. So a couple of things I didn't like about the game, but overall, I think a lot of people are going to enjoy this. And of course, some of the ones I played liked it even better than Clank, and that's The Hunger. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we're all vampires coming out of the castle at night, going around, and we're trying to hunt humans and find different items, maybe get all the way through all the different lands to the labyrinth, get this cool rose, and then come all the way back because if we don't get back to the castle before the sun comes out, we will be burned to ashes. Today we're taking a look at The Hunger. This is from Renegade Game Studios from designer Richard Garfield, the one, the only. This made my #1 most anticipated game at Gen Con, so let me show you how it's played. I'll see you on the other side. In The Hunger, you're going to be one of these vampires, and each of them will start with their own deck of cards because this is a deck building game. You're going to be building those, and these vampires are going to be off hunting humans throughout the game. Here's what some of the other vampires or other players will be throughout the game, and I really love the art here. I know it's a personal preference, but it's more of a cartoony than sort of a dark art, and it's just beautiful. Now here's the main board in the game. Everyone is going to start in this castle, and over the course of the game, you're going to be moving away from the castle through the cemetery and through the mountains and through the plains and picking which route you're going to take through the forest and maybe even getting to the labyrinth. Because if you get all the way to the labyrinth, you'll be able to get one of these roses, which will give you an ability every turn. But you only have 15 turns to make it back. Because if you don't get back all the way either to the cemetery or the castle, well, you've been burned by the sun before the sun rises and you cannot score anything. If you make it back to the cemetery, you get -5 points, but you're still alive and you can still score. Now this is what they call the elder version of the game, or the normal version of the game. On the back side of this board, there's another map where you can even be in the mountain regions too and still live and score points, but you'll get negative points, but at least you don't completely die. So if you do make it back far enough towards the castle, you'll be able to score points, and the main way of doing that are by some public missions that will be each game, like gain 5 points if you hunted more humans than each of the other vampires, for example. Each player is going to start with 2 missions secretly that they get to select one to keep, like gain 1 point for each human you've hunted that is worth 1 or 2, or gain 6 if you have the most hunted church humans than any other vampires. You can select one of these, keep it secret. At the end of the game, you'll be able to score that, assuming you live. You're also going to be scoring points by going to treasure chests and getting bonus tokens. And you'll be getting points by hunting different humans as well. So on your turn, you're going to have a hand of 3 cards. You're going to place them in your playing area, and some of the cards will have effects that you'll use, and some of them may or may not trigger. Like this one says, hey, draw an extra card if you have at least 1 human in your playing area. In this case, we don't, but this one says, hey, you'd get some extra speed if you have at least 1 human. Now, these cards can be used for abilities, but they can also be used for speed, and that's going to tell you how far you can move on the map. Like this is 3, 4, 5, in this case, 6. Now let's say, we're a turn or 2 in, and I'm going to move. Now I can move up to 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or I can decide to not use all the speed. We'll show you this in just a moment. Like maybe I want to go 1, 2, 3 and leave myself, with 3 speed that I haven't yet used, because this is going to allow me to look at these missions and take one. But not only can I take one of these, I can actually put one of mine back as well in the normal game. So you can get rid of a mission that maybe later in the game you realize you weren't going to do that well with. So essentially you take all of them in your hand and you replace all but one of them. So the one you might be putting back, might be, one of the ones you already took earlier. But maybe I didn't want to do missions. Maybe I wanted to move here. This would have just been using 2 of those. Now some of the spaces on the board have special things that go on, like that one allowed you to get some missions. The wells allow you to hunt more than once, and some places allow you to take treasures, as I showed earlier. So there's different spots on the board that trigger different things. Now I had 6 speed, I only used 2 of them, so I have 4 left and I'm able to hunt. And because I went to the well, I actually get to hunt more than once. Now at the beginning of the game, you just have 1 column of cards, but at the end of each round, cards are gonna be sliding to the right and new ones are coming out. And you can see the cost is 3 speed, 2, and 1 here in order to do that. Now we had 4 speed left. And if you remember, one of the mission that we had kept early in the game secretly is gain 6 if you've hunted the most church humans. Well, this one's a church, and so is this one. This one costs 3. And it's going to immediately give me 4 points if I get it, and it will go into my discard pile. But when I play this later on, I won't be able to hunt that turn. But let's say we want to go ahead and buy this. It would immediately give us 4 points, and it would go in our discard pile. Now, we were on the well. That allows you to hunt the second time, but only from this 1 cost column, which we still have enough. And now in future rounds, as these push forward, there could be multiple cards in here and you'd get them all for this price. But hey, this is a church one. I want that too. Father Eli, now it's slow. It starts on 2, which basically meant it would have started in this column here, but that's okay. We're going to get them. And again, it's going to help us with our church. We're going to get 3 points. So even though those cards help you now, well, they're going to, do bad things here, but these ones don't have any speed, right? And so it's going to make you move slower as you clog up your deck with these cards. So it's sort of a balance, because remember, you got to get back. And that's also why if you hunt in the plains, you'll get an additional point. If you do it in the forest, you'll get 2 additional points. So turns out pretty simple. I mean, you're going to basically play your 3 cards, you're going to use them, you're going to move, and then you're going to hunt. But typically what's going to happen is you can see that there's different routes over here. Like once I'm here, I can come down here to the rails, and when I get here, I can go on the road, or I can continue on the rails. And this is important because whoever's furthest away from the castle gets to go first. And if it's tied, the people on the road get to go first, then the rails, for example. And there's even another route out here at the ocean. You can go around that way too. So there's different ways that you can go throughout the game. And once you're done with all those, you're simply going to take these, put them in your discard pile, and draw out more cards into your hand for next turn. And, if you ever run out, like standard deck builder, you'll shuffle this, make a new deck, and create a new hand. And as you can see, there's all different types of cards, there's even familiars, and these are special because they're permanent. Once they come out, they'll stay in your area. So for example, this one will gain you 1 speed to hunt on wells, or you can discard it to have an extra hunt in the 1 column. Or Lockjaw, it's all, again, ready permanent. You gain a point and 2 speed if you have 2 or more humans in your playing areas. But these stay, these familiars always stay, so that you can sort of stack them over the course of the game. Now we also mentioned treasures. Now if you go to a treasure and you only activate the spot when you land there for the end of your movement, you're always going to get 2 points for getting the treasure. And then they're going to do all different things. Like for example, this one gives you, hey, +2. It's a velvet scarf, so you get 2 points immediately. And there's some open treasures, and you can see what these are, like an extra speed or some points. So this allows you to take another turn, but you can't hunt, or getting a mission card, or acting as one towards sort of the that type of human, for example, because a lot of the missions have to do with how many you've gotten of a certain type of humans. And again, if you get all the way to the end of the labyrinth, you can pick one of the roses, assuming that there's still one there. Now, of course, they're going to give you 5 points. These two, this one's going to give you 3, but they do different things. Like this is ready, unique, and permanent. You gain 2 points at the end of the turns where you do not hunt. So for the rest of the game, this is powerful. Gain 1 point at the end of your turn. Gain 1 point at the end of your turns when you do hunt. So different strategies, but these also stay out and give you, points each turn. So you really want to get down there. Now, in a nutshell, that's the game. It's 15 turns. At the end of that turn, if you have not made it back to at least the cemetery, like these guys, they're burned and don't score anything. This one would still score, but they get -5 if you make it back to the castle. Well, you're okay there. One other thing about moving is when you're moving through people, if you end, you can actually push them next to each other or, off to another spot. And that can mess with people as well, although you can never push in the cemetery and things like that. But that's pretty much it. If you're able to stay alive, meaning you finished here and you basically add up the points from where you already have and all the end game goals and all your missions and things like that, and whoever has the most points is the winner. Remembering that the back side of the board is the easier side where you can still live and get points even through the mountains. All right, let's first start with the things that I liked about the game. I love the art in this game. Now, I know this is a very personal thing, but so many times in vampire games, it's very dark art because it kind of goes with the theme and such, and I don't like that as much. I like this sort of more cartoony art. It's just a personal preference, but I thought it looked really good at having all the cards have different artwork on them. I thought that was really good here from Renegade, because not every game that probably should have different art on every card does, and because it costs a lot of money to put in, have an artist do all these different illustrations, I'm glad they put the time in. I think it really paid off for the way that the game looks and feels. The game is essentially deck building mixed with press your luck, which Renegade also put out a very popular game called Clank and Clank in Space recently, and a lot of people are going to want to know how this feels compared to that, and I'll get more of that later because this is definitely a different game, but it does mash both of those together in a similar way to Clank, but still yet different. Again, we'll talk more about that a little bit later, but it was one of the main reasons why I was really interested in that. I'm not really huge on deck builders, but when you add the board moving in and things like that and other aspects, then I tend to be more interested in it, but I like how they kind of put those together, and it does work well. The missions themselves give you tons of focus. You have public missions that everyone's fighting for. Then you have these private ones that you're gonna be trying to pick up throughout the way, and you can decide to get more or less. And I love that when you go to get missions, you can pick up a whole stack of them and you get to put it back with one less that's there, which means if you have other missions that you got maybe at the beginning of the game that you chose, or maybe some other ones, and then for certain other reasons they're just not lining up with your strategy for that game, you can put back one that you've already taken and take an additional one. So I really like that you have a lot of flexibility in the missions, and it really helps give you focus. And speaking of Richard Garfield, this reminded me of like the parchment cards in Bunny Kingdom that he designed, where you're drafting cards and you're getting a bunch of these missions that really focuses what you're going to do each game, and it changes your strategy for each game, and I like that aspect of it. My favorite part is just getting different missions and focusing on different things each game and having different strategies. Now, when you're going to, the idea here is you're going around, you're hunting humans, but if you get all the way to the end, you'll get to the labyrinth. We can get the rose that gives you some powerful abilities every turn, usually getting you points every turn, plus points when you hunt it. Now, going further down here is important because it also means you're better in turn order. And this is interesting because as people hunt on their turns and they take humans from the sort of the market row, they don't refresh until the end of the round, which means whoever's furthest away from the castle, being the riskiest or the furthest or fastest away, is gonna get to go first, and turn order is really important here. So that's one thing that sort of incentivizes people to actually go further away than others from the castle. Now, I talked about multiple strategies earlier, and there are a bunch of these. You can race to the end, get the rose, race back, and pick up a few things along the way, but you probably can't clog your deck up too much with those humans. And that's a really interesting part about this that I'll get to a little bit later. But so you can race to the end, or maybe you go just to the forest because you actually get 2 extra points when you hunt in the forest. So maybe you just go right to the edge of the forest, hunt a few times, and come back. Or maybe you just stay like halfway and you go and get a bunch of those items on the railroad. and then you come back. Or maybe you stay really close and you go to the tavern and you just do a ton of hunting. Maybe get a bunch of different missions and just do a bunch of hunting and then get back easily. You know you're gonna get back there first and get the big 10 points or however many points depending on the amount of players you're playing. So there are different strategies here. Now, hunting is very thematic because it slows you down because you're spending time instead of running and using the speed to go places, you're spending time hunting. And so thematically it makes sense, but it also really clogs your deck up because most of those have 0 speed. And so you're hunting these different humans to get these different abilities or get these, go for your missions, but it's also gonna really clog your deck up and you're not gonna be able to move as fast. So you really have to only get the ones that are really the most, advantageous for you in your missions. So you really have to find the right balance of your strategy as to like what to do. Now on the negative side of things, getting to the labyrinth for me feels hardly worth it. Because sure, you're in the forest and you get 2 more points for hunting vampires there. Sure, you get to the rose, especially first, you'll get the really cool one, get you a point every turn, plus 5 points when you get it. But, and sure, the further you are, the more you're in first in turn order to get them. But you really have to rush to get that and to get back in time, especially if you're playing the normal game. Now, I played both the normal game and what they call the rookie mode. The rookie mode is it's a lot more forgiving, where you can still score your points when you get just back to the mountains, not all the way to the cemetery or all the way to the castle. Now you get a lot less points, like 25 or 20 or 15, but at least you get to score it. I actually like that version better. It makes me feel like I actually have a little bit more flexibility in time, and it actually makes me feel like I can get a little bit more done and still have a shot at possibly winning. And I did like that better because 14 turns is not a lot, especially when you're just having 3 cards each turn to play, by default. And so I felt like racing the labyrinth and racing back felt hardly worth it. It also felt less fun to me because you had to just really get cards that helped you speed up and not get a lot of humans because it's really hard to get there and get back in time, especially with the normal game. So I felt like that was hardly worth it. I felt like it should have been a bigger advantage to getting all the way in and getting one of those roses. And to compound that with another negative, which is those humans that don't get hunted go into that stack with the 1 speed at the end. And when you hunt a certain stack, you got to take all the cards there. Well, if you're far away, you're not going to buy a big stack unless you have a few turns left and you're not going to get those cards in your discard pile back into your deck. But you don't necessarily want to do that because most of those are humans that have 0 speed. And so towards the end of the game, it really gives the people who stayed closer, didn't go as far, and has a couple extra turns to still get back to hunt those big stacks of cards, which could be huge points. In the games that I played, those piles are like 20 points or more of just humans that are sitting there that you could just grab and get back, get the 10 points for being first back. So it feels like there should be a little bit more of a bonus for getting all the way to the end to kind of balance that out. Otherwise, it doesn't feel like it's that big of I'd rather just hang around and do things than buy a big stack and get back. So let's talk a little bit, now with that being said, let me talk a little bit about expectations for the game. I went into this, much like most people probably like, oh, it's kind of like Clank, right? You're gonna go to the far, you're gonna get the better stuff, you're gonna come back. And yes, you can play it that way, but if that's not the only way to play the game, as I mentioned, there's many different strategies. So if you play this game, go into the fact that it's like, sure, it's kind of a deck builder, but not really, because you're drawing 3 cards in your turn, not 5, like in most deck building games. And you're not going to buy as many cards as I'd say you would in other deck building games, especially if you want to get back in time. You really got to buy the right cards. And so you need to go in this game with the expectation of this isn't just like a Clank, race as far as you can, get something out and come out. It really is like more of a sandbox where do whatever you want to do, but don't have that expectation, because if I think you do, I think the experience won't be quite as good. Because the more I played this, the more I felt like it got better with each play because I didn't have those expectations on it. So it is similar to Clank, but it definitely does feel different because of that. The main difference is, well, you have 14 rounds here, and you know when it's going to end. Where in Clank, it's a lot more open to the players doing different things and someone getting back quickly and ending the game faster, doing this and that. So it's a much more open, much more interaction flow. Where this is more, you know when it's going to end. And that can be both good or bad. Some people, it's going to be better. Some people are like, I don't like that randomness of having to like do something because somebody else did it. I'd like to just do my thing in 14 rounds and get back. And if that's you, you'll probably like that aspect better than Clank. I actually like the interaction and the flow of the game better, not quite knowing exactly how many turns it would be, but playing off what other players are doing better. So I like that aspect in Clank better. And that's that whole timing thing. Now, With that being said, I prefer sort of like a Clank in space experience better than this, but this is a lot faster, it's a lot easier to set up. I mean, this does play in about 60 minutes, it's less things to set the game up. Although others that I played this with actually preferred this over Clank, so that says a lot actually, because that game is very popular. So I hope that I've been able to give you both positives and negatives and tell you how it's similar but yet different from Clank and whether this would be a good purchase for you. And that's what I've thought about The Hunger. This has been a Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships through board games by helping you find the next one you'll love. Game Toppers not only transforms your existing table to a high-quality gaming solution, they now offer full leg kits and dining cover solutions for the full table application. Paired with their amazing, thematic, premium stitch edge mats from noted board game artists like Vincent Dutray, collapsible cup holders, and really cool accessories, it's a complete system that upgrades every game you play. Go to GameToppersLLC.com or click the link below.